Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, long-time listeners will remember that way back on episode 223, I had the pleasure of talking to Jeff Allen, the Senior Director of Adobe Analytics. And that conversation was when I met him in Las Vegas at the Adobe Summit. Fast forward 2 years, I'm now at the Adobe European Summit, and I bumped into Jeff again, but on this side of the Atlantic, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for a quick catch-up. And I also thought it'd be great to invite you guys along to eavesdrop on our conversation. You might remember the last time that we met, I spotted 6 NBA hoop games, and I quickly noticed that anyone approaching these games machines were advised to scan their registration pass, and it seemed that their game would populate a metrics dashboard. And it was at that point that I realised that Adobe were actually trying to simplify the complex world of analytics by showing every user how much data could be obtained by a simple game of NBA hoops. By giving attendees an opportunity to see a real-time dashboard game visualization with an enormous amount of data, enabled anyone, regardless of their position, to instantly understand the value and the power of an analytics. Essentially, Jeff Allen helps navigate around those buzzwords, around those algorithms and models, so you can get to the essence of how data science can move the needle of your organisation, and highlighted all that through an NBA hoops arcade game. So this one is more of a quick catch-up with Jeff Allen, the Senior Director of Adobe Analytics, rather than a full and planned podcast. So I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I'm going to directly airdrop you into the conversation now, where Jeff was explaining to me the challenges retailers are facing by not knowing their customer or their behaviour, their likes and dislikes across all the channels, and the problems that that can cause.
When you walk into a retail store, you've had experiences maybe on the phone, and you've had experiences in digital interactions, and you've gotten emails and other things. You might be a very loyal customer who spends a lot of money with the brand, but when you walk into that store, no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about you, right? You could be their number one customer in the world. No idea. And so that's not going to be acceptable for much longer for people with brands, right? People more and more expect more of brands. And so that's why our focus at this conference and in this business is around experiences, because really that's what's going to determine whether people are loyal to your brand or not, is what kind of experience can you craft. And frankly, the experience is a proxy for the relationship you have with them. So, if you and I, if we had dinner and you shared something really personal with me, if your brother, let's say, is struggling with something very personal, and we had a conversation about that, and the next day I didn't ask you anything about your brother or acknowledge that we'd had that conversation, we have a different relationship, right? Whereas if I go into that topic with you the next day, that deepens our relationship. And the more in personal interactions, the more I remember what we talked about and follow up on that with you, the closer our relationship is. The same is absolutely true with brands. So if you don't remember what I bought from you, if you don't remember how much I've bought from you over time, if you don't remember that I always choose you and never your competitors, then that shows up the wrong way for brands. And so the data is at the heart of all of that. And that's what I look after, is the data and analytics aspects of Adobe Experience Cloud.
Speaking of that data and analytics, it really seems like it's going to be a big challenge for brands, because on one side, I think as a consumer, we're demanding personalised experiences. We want that real-time personalisation. But at the same time, we've got the GDPR and the Cambridge Analytica thing. And it's almost like, how do you get that right balance between the two, where you give somebody exactly what they want, but without being creepy? Because we want it, but equally it's hard to deliver that, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends. Each brand has to figure that out for themselves. There are some brands that I interact with where I'm very careful with my information. And there are other brands that I'm like, they know everything about me and I don't really care. I want them to use that to make my experience better. So like my experience with my bank, with my airline, credit card company, I'm really happy to have a very personal relationship with them, because I feel like the more I tell them about me, the better they serve me. But there are other brands, a lot of media brands, right, I don't want to give them a lot of my information. I prefer to be fairly anonymous in a lot of those interactions, right? And so it's going to vary by industry and by brand, but every single brand has to figure out what's creepy and what isn't. And, you do that through the same way you would with relationships, right? If the first time I met you, I started asking you all kinds of personal questions, you'd be like, hang on, But at some point, you can develop a relationship with an individual. That's the same thing, right? I mean, these are things, and these are, by the way, we were just having a conversation a few minutes ago with somebody else about this concern a lot of marketers have that AI will take over their jobs, that they won't have careers long term. But one thing AI is not going to be good at is understanding how to read body language, right, and decide when it's appropriate to go to the next level in your relationship. If you think about experiences as a path to relationship, maybe a proxy for relationship, people are going to be a lot better at that, right? So building the models that tell the brand, teach the brand when to take the next step in I'm doing air quotes, relationship, right? Is really critical, and that's where humans are going to be really important as we seek to drive deeper personalization.
Yeah, that's something we don't talk about enough, I think, because yes, AI will retire a lot of those older job roles that are no longer fit for the digital age, but it's going to be a whole load of other roles that emerge, isn't there, off the back of that? I mean, 10 years ago there was no social media analysts, data scientists, developers, but right. Now we're getting more and more new roles for the modern era.
That's exactly what will happen. I mean, certain roles will absolutely go away, right?
Yeah. And that's no bad thing, is it?
It's a good thing, yeah. I mean, you think about a lot of jobs we used to do, film processing, right? Like, if you had a talent for working in a dark room, right, that there's no use for that almost anywhere anymore in society, right? But if you're good in Lightroom, Photoshop and Lightroom, then you can do amazing things with photos. So if you're someone who really loved color correction in the paper film processing process, you do that in a completely different way today, but there's still a need to have that eye, right? There's still a need to have an understanding of aesthetics and things like that. So every job adapts, right? And people who embrace change, I think we're in an era, right, where there's so much change. Anyone who works understands that they have to adapt and change.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never want to see another article with a robot with red eyes talking about artificial intelligence,
right.
Yeah. But I think another thing that we do forget there with artificial intelligence, ironically, it's taking humans away from robotic jobs, automation jobs, mundane tasks, and allowing them to focus on more creative tasks. And what we're best at as humans, let the machines do the boring stuff, and let the humans concentrate on strategy and creativity. And
totally. You can go back to the 70s when the ATM was introduced, right? And the buzzword of that era was RPA, robotic process engineering, or process automation, RPA. And robotic process automation was what the ATM was, right? It said, I can figure out how to have someone tell me who they are and then ask me for money or give me money, and I can count that money and disperse it or accept it, right? And that was the job of the ATM. And bank clerks, bank tellers were concerned that would mean the end of their jobs. But if you go back and look at the data, the number of bank tellers rose with the advent of the ATM. And the reason was because the bank tellers played a much more critical role than counting money, right? They became salespeople. They were the face of the bank. And so if they didn't have to spend as much time dispersing money and collecting money, they could spend more time selling loans and selling other products that the bank has. And so bank teller jobs increased, bank branch locations increased, even with the advent of the ATM. I mean, ATMs are everywhere now, yet there are more bank branches as well, and it's because the banks were able to make more money by automating some of those processes. So yes, someone who believed their whole value was in accurately counting money needed to adapt, but they were actually able to adapt into higher value, higher paying jobs. A lot of those more sales jobs and financial services come with commission plans, which how would you commission someone who counts money every day, but you sell things.
So talking about your own experiences there and airlines and who has what information and who you're happy with and who you're not happy with, would you say that it's less about the transaction now and more about the relationship with that company?
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about airlines. I mean, I don't know why travel is so stressful, but everybody's stressed out at the airport, right? Everybody's in a hurry. They don't want to miss their plane. They don't want to, and there's a bunch of uncertainty around that whole experience. And so I think airline loyalty programs capitalize that in a great way, right? They figure out how to take their most loyal customers and provide them essentially a bunch of perks that reduce the stress of the travel experience, right? You think about a loyalty lounge, right? And that's a different experience where I can go in, grab a bite to eat, put my feet up, watch television, read a magazine in a quieter place. And those are all things that are hard to find outside in the main airport, right?
Yeah.
Well, all that stuff is driven by loyalty, right? The same with, the seats in the front of the plane versus the back of the plane. A lot of those are given out as, loyalty rewards. But even something like choosing your seat, right? The options available to you are better if you are more loyal to the airline. So airlines have gotten really good at understanding that people are willing to trade their information and to be loyal to the brand in exchange for a better customer experience. And but you absolutely expect them to recognize you, right? You expect them to recognize your status. You expect them to give you the perks that you deserve, and to treat you differently if you're a very loyal customer. And so I think for the most part, I fly mostly with Delta Airlines, and they do a phenomenal job of stitching that together. And they, I don't think you see experience in a more palatable way, for me anyway, than you do in the travel and hospitality world, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't sleep inside of the stores of any brands except hotel brands, right? Well, airplanes too, I guess. But those two are the only. I don't sleep in a Nike store, right? I don't eat in a Nike store, right? I don't watch TV or movies in a Nike store, but I do all of that in hotels and on airplanes. And so those guys have a really cool opportunity, and I think they're some of the leaders in how they craft experiences. So I think, it's smart for other brands to pay attention to industries like those that really have to craft more extensive and comprehensive experiences for their customers, and they have that same multi-channel challenge, right? Like, think about how many channels you interact with an airline in or with a hotel in. I mean, I talk to the airline on the phone, I chat with them, I tweet at them when they get something wrong, right?
As we all do.
Right? I'm on their website, I have their mobile app, I see their screens in the airport, I interact with their people in the airport, multiple people throughout the airport experience on the airplanes. I get their survey after the flight. I mean, these are all channels that are full of signal for the airline to pay attention to. And if they're listening and paying attention, they can help you stay loyal by taking care of a problem when there's a broken seat, or when there's something doesn't, TV doesn't work, or the Wi-Fi goes down early. If you're listening to your customers, you can certainly optimize your product. But most of what an airline does, well, they certainly want to optimize the product when it fails. The first thing they do is optimize the relationship by apologizing, saying we're trying to correct that. In the meantime, Delta will say, we'd like to offer you some points as an apology, right? So they correct that relationship really quickly and just get those those feelings of angst that you can have as a traveler, and especially when you feel like you've been treated wrongly. Airlines are really good at, especially Delta, which is where I have my experience, they're really good at correcting that quickly. But the focus, right, is I've got a product and I've got a relationship, and I have to solve things in both of those. And the data gives you all kinds of signal to know what to do.
Well, speaking of that data, because I think you've just highlighted problems that every business owner is going through at the moment, and there's so many different channels, and depending on how we're feeling, we'll choose the channel relevant to that. So how, at Adobe, are you actually unifying all those channels, all that data, so they can actually create experiences from that single point of data, the information?
It's a huge challenge that we're constantly working on solving. We collect data from about 16 or 17 different channels today with Adobe Analytics, even though we're best known for what we do in the web channel.
Yeah.
We do things across video and audio. We use enterprise data, incorporate that. We have social, we have mobile, we have connected car, we have digital voice assistants. So we have a number of different technologies where people interact with brands through, and we collect that data. So like you saw yesterday in the keynote, we did a demo where a woman paid for her child's school lunches through a banking mobile app, right? Speaking through the digital voice assistant. Well, the analytics captured what the interaction was with the digital voice assistant. And then the AI also understood that, hey, you do this a lot, right? So in the demo we said, we said that, so she said, I want to put 20 pounds in my son's school lunch account balance, right? And the bank was able to look up in their system and say, you give these people 20 pounds often on a weekly basis. Do you want to set that up as a weekly recurring transfer? And that's a great example of listening to your customer, using AI to understand and offer them better services. But in that also is this really interesting voice assistant analytics that a lot of brands aren't able to measure, right?
Yeah.
And so you got to keep that too, right? More and more people are going to be asking their digital assistants to do things for them. Absolutely critical for brands to understand that and understand what that means. It's, voice interactions are going to grow to be as bigger than web interactions.
I was going to say there, because I noticed at least 3 keynotes yesterday featured voice search or voice activation. Do you think that trend's just going to continue?
Yes, absolutely. We have customers who actually have, instead of going into meetings and putting up charts and graphs to show the performance of their business, they've actually integrated voice assistants into their meeting rooms. And when someone wants to know how something's performing, they ask the voice assistant, how are orders performing? Right? How many visitors did we have on this section of the website yesterday? And that translates into Adobe Analytics to go get answers.
And that becomes an expectation then, doesn't it? And if you go into another boardroom and it's just a crusty old report, it's a completely different experience.
You can't have a meeting
again,
in here. There's no AI to tell us how the things are performing, right? And so that's a really unique innovation that I think is going to drive more and more of what we're doing.
So what excites you most about working in Adobe Analytics? Is there any other things that you can share? I appreciate you probably can't share too much.
Yeah, I think what's the most exciting is just how fast it's changing, right? How fast it's growing. When I came here, we were doing web analytics and video analytics. And today, like I said, it's connected car, it's digital voice assistant, it's audio podcast analytics, it's video analytics, it's so many categories. And then the way we're using AI and ML to stitch things together and predict things is better than ever. But I think what I'm the most excited about is that the education and training bar keeps coming down for being able to do powerful things with data. So, when I joined Adobe, it's almost, so I'm starting my 7th year in this same role this month. And when I came, you really had to be a data scientist to get some really insightful things out of analytics. And today, my mother-in-law, I could teach her. So I use her as an example because she's smart, but she doesn't know our world. I could put her in front of our tools and in a quick demo teach her how to do things that would take a degree in statistics and years in the seat to do just 5 years ago. And so really that's what's so exciting to me is just the way we're able to now start to democratize data science and the role of the data analyst so that more and more people in the organization can get access to insights to do their jobs better.
Yeah, that's something Adobe do so well. Like you said at Vegas with the basketball thing, because analytics is a quite dry subject, isn't it? And it's something that not everybody's going to get and be able to delve straight into. But if you can play a game of basketball and dive into those insights, and suddenly it all falls into place, doesn't it? You just get it instantly.
It's just scorekeeping. That's all analytics is, right? It's just a lot of different things that you're keeping score on. And understanding which scoreboard matters in which context, and then how you can use that data to your advantage is kind of the rest of the game, if you will, with analytics.
Cool. Well, a huge thanks for taking a few moments to go through that with me today, Jeff, and I'll see you again at next year's summit.
Looking forward to it.
For me, that was a great opportunity to meet Jeff on this side of the Atlantic too and catch up with how far things are advancing and the challenges and opportunities that he's facing there. And who knows, maybe our next chat will have to be in another continent. Maybe it should be Australia or Asia. I think that's the only way we're going to be able to top the last two, isn't it? Seriously though, I respect Jeff for being completely open and honest about that world of GDPR and living in a post-Cambridge Analytica world. But like I said on the show, on one hand, consumers are demanding personalisation and improved experiences with our rising expectation levels. But if a brand gets it wrong, then they're quickly deemed creepy. Every brand has a responsibility of getting that balance right. And that's going to leave many feeling inspired and dejected in equal measure. And Jeff made some great points there, how we all have different relationships with different retailers, with different companies. And you cannot go straight into a conversation demanding personal information. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. No matter what industry you work in, how are you getting that balance right? Let me know, because I'd love to share it with the whole audience here, because I think it's a challenge that everybody's facing. So as always, email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com or tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it for this week, and that's it from the Adobe Summit show floor. A big thank you for tuning in as always, and I'll see you all next week. So until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.